Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everybody's a Comedian, where we get all up in comedy's business. I am your host, Keith Graber, and with me as my guests are a couple of my faves and fellow show producers, Sally Mullins and Teresa Lowe. Sally,
Hey.
would you like to take a virtual bow?
Sure. Can I
Say hi to the
curtsy?
audience.
Can I curtsy?
Yes, you may. A lot of people won't be seeing it, so you might be doing this for nothing, but that's fine.
That's what I do everything for.
And Teresa, say hi to the folks at home.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching.
And or listening. So this is not ableist in terms of people who are on YouTube. This is for all the people out there driving. Keep your eyes on the road and listen to us. We're gonna talk some shit about comedy today. So let's get right into it. You guys are both producers. I'm also a producer of comedy shows and various types of content. And so I want to get into the minds of other producers and figure out what makes you tick. So what exactly drives you to produce your own content and or shows?
I'm
Sally?
really bossy. I'm really old and bossy. I'm just kidding. you do you want to start, Teresa? You can
Oh
go
yeah, I'll
first.
start. I think for me, so before became a stand-up, I was purely only doing writing, so I was more behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And I think like when I was doing that, I just saw a lot of the times that if you wait around too much for people to give you opportunities, you're going to be waiting for a really long time. And so when I started doing stand up, I kind of was just like, I got to be proactive because I mean, I was getting booked on shows, but it was like maybe like once a month or something. And then
Mhm.
I was like, but if I make my own show, that definitely increases my visibility and I have to take my career in my own hands. And I guess that kind of is where I started, like my initial motivation. And then a lot of times too, it's like I was seeing shows and it was just like a bunch of dudes and maybe like one woman, or like they weren't booking minorities and things like that. And I was kind of like, no, I want to create my own thing. And so that drove me.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more. It that was for me. I was like, it was either this or nothing. Either I make my own thing or I have nothing,
Yeah.
or very little. Yeah. Sally?
It was I would say number one for stage time, just to get myself some stage time, get to be a better comic, create an opportunity for more stage time for myself. And I would often host. So it'd often be like I'm taking the toughest gig, but
Mhm.
sometimes I give myself a good spot. And then also, like you were saying, Teresa and Keith, like to have something to exchange with other people. Like I'll book you on mine, you book me on yours,
Mhm.
and to work with some comics who are doing better than I was, more experienced than I was. And also, like, just to be like a mom, and like, hey, I've got a show for you where you'll be treated right, and we get a little crowd, and, your friends will enjoy seeing you in this show, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely the networking is an important factor in that. And yeah, there's a little bit of like a handshake deal with booking people,
Well, fuck yes.
getting
Yeah.
booked on their shows. And I mean, that's what it's all about, though. Like, comedy should be a community. It can't be sort of these, one-off groups or
Yeah.
sects. Did I say that right? I'm saying
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
SECT, people. Don't get it twisted. All right.
And also, if you produce, you have the control, right? Like, for instance, like I won't book people that have creepy reputations or disrespectful to me. And so
Mhm.
it's kind of like I don't have to worry anymore about doing shows where you're mistreated. And it's kind of that thing like when Sally was talking about is like when we create a show and we know you're going to be treated right, it's like we know that because we're the one in charge.
Mhm.
Hmm. And a lot of comics would do like I saw them getting hosted by a lot of bringer shows. Like they would bring all their friends from work and they would be held till the last spot in the show. My boss Vargas never did that, but there are a lot of shows that if you bring 18 people, you're going to have those people saved till the end. Like you're going last and you're going to perform in front of 18 people when everyone else is left and the momentum of the crowd is left. And then your friends from work are like, okay, that was weird. So I would say
Yeah.
if you come and you do my show and you bring five or more people, you're going up in the middle. Your friends are going to not have to wait too long.
Yeah, and is that's a producer slash host's tactic to keep those 18 people in the room for as long as possible.
I would put up the people who were like the stronger comics who weren't hooking me up with anything. Then at that point, you're just like, hey, you want to come do a workout spot and close the show down? And we might not have that many people there. And also, I would try to make the show like less than 2 hours. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I have a show at the Good Night, and it runs about 90 minutes. And like I feel like every spot is a good spot because with the Good Night, people trickle in and out. So you have no clue what time you'll have the best crowd. And like I don't ever force comics to bring. And so it really is like every spot is equal about what your possibility is gonna get.
Sure. And
I would be like, you can bring or you could not bring, but where you bring is, I mean, it's gonna, like, even if you're not that great of a comic, I'll put you in the middle of my show if you bring a buttload of people, because I agree with you, Teresa, that every spot in a show like yours, an hour and a half show, is a good spot. But for new comics, like, they don't want to go up too early and they don't want to go up too late. And new comics, let's face it, it's LA. New comics are going to be the ones who bring people. So the structure of my shows would definitely be BCA, because your most experienced comics would be at the end. And they would be like, hey, if you stuck around, you get to see a pro. But in the middle would be the newer comics who really like needed the help of a warmed up crowd,
Yeah, like what I typically do too is like I try to, like, I always have 12 spots, and I maybe give 3 to completely new people, like less than a year, and then I make half of people I know are going to deliver, and then like 3 people who have been around a while that I'm not sure how they're going to do. So I guess it's like I make sure at least half is going to be reliable people, because like sometimes it is kind of scary when you book new people and you're also not a bringer show. So it's kind of like you're just relying on them to be good, but you don't know how they're going to act. Like there's some people that I'm like, oh, I thought you were going to be good, and then they were total like jerks to me.
Either they're jerks or they do a set that was like nothing like what you booked them for, or they get up and they're like, they don't give a shit about your show and they're just reading off their phone and it's stuff they wrote that morning. And whoa,
I was one time so mad. I did a show, it was like a brunch show, and my friend who I really trusted at the time, she was like, hey, I vouch for this girl, can you give her a drop-in spot? And normally I never give drop-in spots because I'm very type A, but I was like, you know what, for this girl, I'm gonna let you. The drop-in girl, she went over time by 2 minutes, literally read from a notebook, and even said, she was like, oh yeah, I didn't really think this out, but whatever. And like really it was like disrespectful to the crowd. So not only was she not funny, she treated it like a mic, but she really just crapped on me. And I was so mad though more at my friend, because I was like, you vouched for this girl. Like, why did you do that? And after that, I was like, no more drop-ins.
And also, like, no more recommendations from that person.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they can recover their rep with you at some point. But when you represent somebody, when somebody hooks you up, like if somebody says, like, hey, Sally, I got you in this show, I'm going to bring some A game. I'm going to do a couple of new jokes, but I know what they want to hear. And I'm going to bring some A game to that show because my friend got me in there. Like, come on.
Yeah. After that, I was like, I won't take drop-ins. And I also, I didn't really listen to that girl's opinion anymore, because I was like, this is who you bring to my space, And so it did bother me a lot.
Well, if I were that girl, I would be like, oh my God, Teresa, I am so sorry. I mean, that girl is a headliner. That girl has a special. I've seen her kill. I am so sorry. But no.
She stuck her neck out for someone who does comedy, I guess, kind of casually, but she didn't tell me that. And I'm a little bit like, this was a show, and the girl treated it like a mic. But not only that, she treated it like people at a mics leave at the time they're doing. I was like waving the light, she would not get off the stage. And I was, even when she make little flippant comments like, oh, I didn't prepare for this, I just came up. Or you're just kind of like, well, now you're just really crapping on the audience too. And I was
shoe fly, don't care,
I have to say, I haven't been in comedy that long, admittedly, and every single one of the things that you're talking about, I've seen. Like I've already seen an example of every single one of these incidents. So it's so weird that that's so prolific, yet like we're all trying, like I just feel like we're all trying to get better, and it's such a grind. It's such a hard job, and we're all trying to do the best we can. And then to see, sort of people drop the ball or just be, egregious is I don't know, kind of, it's
But
almost
I don't get
fascinating.
mad at people for bombing, Keith. I mean, I want to clarify because people have to take risks as an artist,
Hmm.
and new comics, especially, they kind of haven't figured out their consistency. So they might even be like, oh my God, Teresa Lowe's show. I love Teresa Lowe. I'm going to put together a whole new set. Oh, that show deserves a whole new set. And they
Hmm.
don't
Yeah.
realize that that set's not been worked enough.
Yeah,
So
that's
I try
fair.
not to take it personally unless there's some bullshit attitude.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's that too. Like if someone just doesn't get laughs, but they were like sweet about it, I'm totally not upset.
I've been there.
Like
Yeah.
if that girl had just gone up and did a set and it wasn't very good, but she left at the time she's supposed to leave, she at least looked like she was trying, it would have been a whole different story. I've been like,
Yeah.
okay, fine, she's sweet. This girl was not sweet. This girl was entitled and just crapping on all of us. And yeah, it's just very disrespectful. And it just shocks me sometimes because I will meet comics and like, I'll meet them at mics or something and they seem nice to my face. I'll book them. And then they just really just like crap on me and my show. And I'm kind of like, why are you doing this? Like this, you are willing to pay $5 for a spot at a slotted mic and you'll stay the whole time, but you will not promote or stay for an actual show where I give you a free drink. Like, I'm just kind of like, what's the motivation there? It's just so strange to me.
It's
Yeah.
very, very weird. Sometimes I think people cop a toot and they're like, I'm doing this show a favor. I'm not being paid. Like, that's kind of the bubble they need to live in to feel good about what
Hmm.
they're doing. And I want to be like, it's comedy in LA. None of us are being paid.
And
Yeah.
even the not paying thing, but I'm like, you're willing to pay for stage time, but then when someone gives it to you, all of a sudden you get entitled and weird. Where I'm like, but you just saved $5. Like it's a strange
It's
attitude. But
human
yeah,
nature.
what's
It's
Yeah.
you.
They
Yeah,
get
it's human
combative.
fucking nature.
I've seen comics combative with the crowd because they're not getting laughs. Like the crowd doesn't understand that they should be laughing, like that's the rule, and
Yeah.
and they
Never
disregard the concept that it's your job to make them laugh, dude. This is how this works.
Yeah, they don't understand the professionalism. Where it's like sometimes I've seen a comic where they came to my show and they were like so high and they thought that they could just be like, I'm high. And then like that was it. Where I'm like, you need to have jokes too. But instead he was like, no, I'm just gonna say I'm high and everyone's gonna laugh. And I was like, this is not an open mic in your backyard. Like this is an actual show. And then he just
Yeah.
bombed out. It was so sad.
Anyone who can do comedy high is pretty amazing, though, in my book, because if I get up there and I'm stoned, I just start like making threats and being really weird, you know?
We all know I can't do it high.
Yeah, I can't.
Oh yeah, wow. Wasn't there some mic recently, Keith, where you were super stoned?
I got so stoned, and it was Angelica was up, and she's super funny. I was engrossed in what she was saying so much that I
Yeah.
forgot I was hosting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was this a Zoom mic that you were high or like a real show?
No, it was a Zoom mic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So you're just high at home.
But it would probably be
Yeah.
more embarrassing in a real mic.
I got really high when I had my open mic at the Pig and Whistle one time. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I would get pretty fucked up there, like between free drinks and the comics buying me drinks. And then I got stoned and I went on stage and I said something like, I just want to let everyone know, don't ever fuck with my friends. Don't ever fuck with my. It was like real weird, you know. It was just like a threat. I'm like, I'm gonna take a moment just to like put something out there, you know.
Yeah. Like when you get drunk and you're like, I love you.
No, this was the other end though. This was high paranoid antisocial Sally just issuing an edict.
I never get messed up in public anymore if I'm by myself. Like if I have a friend who can watch me and protect me, but like I have people who like want to touch me and stuff. So for me, I'm always like, I gotta be sober as hell so I could like fight and get a police report and crap. Like I was
Goodness.
one time in a class, like it was a daytime comedy class, and I got molested in the class. I had to hit the guy and scream at him. And this was like during the day. And so I was kind of like, I just like I'm too fearful.
Did he
Oh,
hug
wow.
you, like squeeze you?
No, he sat next to me, and like, so I could tell he had a crush on me. He'd always sit next to me in class. And one day he would just like say dumb jokes and start laughing. And then he started to just like, for some reason, reach down and like touch my leg. And I was like, what is he doing? Because the first time he touched my leg, it was like on the knee. But then like by the third time he did it, he actually went inner thigh, almost touched my vag. I slapped his hand away. I was like, don't touch me. I had to scream at him. The class kind of stopped because this is like even in class, right? It's not even like in
Wow.
a corner or something. And then I later reported him to the teacher. And so the teacher started like, he asked me what I wanted to do. I didn't want to call the cops or anything, but I was like, never let him sit next to me. So after the class, he was always forced to sit on the other side of the room. But I
Good.
was like, I was in daytime in front of other people, and this guy like touched my inner thigh. And it was so insane. And like no drinks, nothing like that, sober. So after that, I like not even after that, but just in general, I'm just kind of like, this shit is not safe. There's too many people to make it not safe.
Yeah, that's and you were mentioning earlier about those kind of people and accidentally booking them. How do you? So, what would be your vetting process without So that incident, but how many incidents out there are unreported or
I say if I know their reputation is bad, I just don't want to mess with them. If I've already booked them and then they act fine, but then I find out later, just don't do a rebook. And then if I've never had it though, where they come to the show and like do something weird. So I've been a little lucky about that. But when I hear other people's stories where the people act weird at the show, I'm like, you got to actually like do something. But I think a lot of producers will look away. But if someone actually touch someone at my show, I would call the cops.
Mhm. Yeah.
I haven't produced anything in quite a while, to be honest. Now, I ran an open mic for 5 years. There were surprisingly few issues with people. There was never an issue with anyone feeling sexually harassed. I mean, we had other issues like weirdos wandering in off the street. No offense to crazy people who are wandering, but they were like doing sets, or a guy called me a bitch one time or something. But I don't know whether it's because I'm like a mom type or something, but people are maybe afraid to be too suggestive.
But even someone like being mean to you and calling you a bitch and
Oh,
stuff,
that's fucked up
it.
too.
Yeah, like what did you do there? Did you kick them out or like, because it's not just about sex, it's just any type of impropriety
Yeah,
that makes people uncomfortable,
any kind
right?
of abuse.
Yeah,
That
like
guy got whisked off the stage.
just,
I had a bouncer.
oh, see, and
But
that's the too. Yeah, it's like, what if they're on the stage, they won't get off, or they say crazy stuff? Like, I
yeah,
haven't done that yet, but I think that's because I don't do mics. Like, I'm actually kind of like, I used to run a student mic at Flappers, but it's all students, so it was like safe, right?
yeah,
But like having a free for all, like I don't know what I would do if I saw like a guy and he's like saying racial slurs or something.
yeah,
And I've
yeah.
seen
I don't
it,
know.
and
I,
they don't stop them.
yeah, I don't know if I'd ever want to do a live mic in real life, open to the public. Anyone can sign up, just show up. It just sounds like so chaotic and disgusting, and to me. So
But Sally, you said you had a bouncer. So would you do it without a bouncer?
Uh, Yeah, I probably would. And this is going to sound really old school, but it was sort of an unofficial bouncer. It was basically just like, it was a dude doing comedy, and that was his mic to work out. He also happened to be really big and have some experience with security. So he kind of became the unofficial bouncer. And I'm not going to lie, if he would have stopped doing comedy, somebody else would have taken over. It was just such a co-op we had going on there.
mhm.
Yeah.
It's not always that easy.
Yeah, I was going to say also that I'm sure that that varies wildly between whether you're doing this show at, let's say, the Comedy Store or another club versus like a bar or some other setting where they do open mics or shows. Like, does Good Night have a bouncer, Teresa?
Goodnight doesn't have a bouncer, but like the bartender, I think he was big enough that he could have stepped in too. And I think
Yeah.
also the Goodnight show too is like, I told you guys my method of booking. So it's like I never really had like a crazy lineup. So it was like the lineup I didn't have to worry about. And the people who came in off the street were all nice. So I was, I guess, pretty lucky there.
Mhm.
But who knows if I had an open mic, I don't know what.
And that's one thing that's great about social media is I have stayed off Instagram quite a lot, like much less than I used to pre-pandemic, but you can go on there at any given time and see who's acting up, who's talking shit, who's acting out, who's anti-masking,
Mhm.
who's, you know, fucking talking shit on women. I mean, who's being inappropriate. And you can kind of be like, yeah, they might be funny, but I've got other people to book.
It's
I'm the
so
same way. I had this one comic and I like loved him as a person. I actually thought he was so funny, but he became so alt-right that I was like, I can't have you around other people. I don't know what's gonna happen. And it was sad because I really liked him a lot.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's probably the same person we're thinking of.
I think so too.
it's so weird how people will offer themselves up on a silver platter on social media.
Yeah.
It's almost like the best tool to out somebody for being an asshole. Like, here's a cell phone.
It's
Have fun.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. So,
Yeah.
so it's their subconscious almost.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably how like most teenagers get caught drinking and stuff because they post dumb pictures, you know, and then their parents find out like, you're supplying evidence. What are you doing here?
Yeah, anyone
awesome,
40 and up got away with so much more when they were in high school.
So I want to talk a little bit about branding and how
Army
that
Hammer?
ties in with being a producer. Because I'm sorry, what'd you say, Sally?
Oh, I said something about Army Hammer.
Yeah. I knew Sally was like, wait, can you clarify? Because I have a couple videos. No, but and how important that is. So you see a lot of comedians doing self-branding, and it, you know, it almost makes you think like, whoa, am I branded enough? You know, am I just going by my name and a bunch of jokes? Is that enough anymore? And how that ties into, you know, being a producer is basically is producing your own content and shows. Is that all part of self-branding? And is that like something that makes you more appealing to industry, et cetera?
Do you want to start, Sally, or do you want me to start?
Well, I will say, oh God, looks like I started. Thank you, honey.
Sally wanted to start the whole time. You know that.
Do it, Sally.
before my my over 50 brain forgets it, my menopause mind. I there's a fine line with the whole, you know, branding thing, and because it takes a while in comedy to find your voice, it takes a while for you to see what is coming out of you and your point of view. So you don't, it just like you never, like when I was coming up in comedy, you had some people might be like, coming up. Um, like you didn't want to go to a comedy teacher who said, oh, you know, you're the feisty this or that or whatever, meet you for 2 seconds and tell you what your voice is. So you got to be like careful as an artist to let others brand you too soon or to try and fit, you know, into something. But as a producer, I think it really does help if you're going to produce a show to brand it early on and go with it. And I'm not saying you can't change it, but I think as a show, you do want to have that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's like you kind of have to let people know what they're going to get. Like, for instance, like with my shows, it's like you always know it's going to be kind of a mix ethnicity wise. You know, it's going to be usually around half and half men and women. Like, and then you also kind of know everyone is nice. Like, I kind of like to really have a vibe of happiness. Like, I've been to some shows where they're kind of edgy and a little angry, but then that's fun too because I know what I'm going to get. And so with my show, it feels like just a group of people that anyone can show up and have a good time. So I try to go like a happy party vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think also like individually as a comic, I think that like, yeah, the stronger comics, you kind of know who they are. Like for instance, like Sally, and I know your background. And then like with Keith, when I know that you're a chef, you know, it's like stuff like that where like it sticks with you, you know, and that kind of thing. Like even when I'm like, let's say when I'm writing articles for Hustler, there's certain topics and I need to Google experts in this field. And so if someone is smart enough to, like, for instance, I wrote an article about cougars. And then I contacted a comic and she calls herself the Cougar of Comedy. It just made it easy for me to find her because she called herself that, you know? And so I think it's that thing, it's that it helps people figure out what they're going to get. And I think that is important.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I see various comedians calling themselves the so-and-so of comedy as sort of like either a self-given nickname, or maybe other people do call them that. But yeah, and I wonder how important that is, and whether that sort of, can ever backfire and sort of pigeonhole you.
So for instance, like as a journalist, I think it's extremely important if you want to go to the next level and get like seen in the media, you do need to have some kind of brand so that people can find you and know what you're going to get. Because if you're just like, I'm a comedian, I don't know what my expertise is, it's like, why would I as a journalist interview you, kind of thing, you know? But if I know like, oh, this is what you specialize in, like I one time interviewed this one comic and he apparently talks about having a foot fetish like a lot in his thing. So I knew to find him because I was like, oh, I need a foot fetish guy. And everyone's like, talk to Alan. You know, it was like, it made it so easy. And so I think that, yeah, it's like based on if you want media press coverage, it definitely helps to brand yourself where people know what they're going to get when they talk to you. And I think that's the same thing too, is like, if you are like shy and you don't know yourself, it makes everyone around you uncomfortable. You know, it's like people can't ask you questions, or when you do your act, it's like kind of bland, you know, it's like, it is better to have a really solid voice.
Sally, do you feel like all the branding that you have is like, do you own it? Do you want to maintain that and retain it?
You know, that's a weird question for me. I mean, I've been doing comedy like longer than the two of you put together have been alive. So and we started out like not being encouraged to do that so much, or like the people who felt like we were the real comics and the good writers, we wanted to stay away from that. Like that felt kind of road, and that felt kind of hacky. Not that I believe you got to use the road to get better. But if you want to be a road comic, then yeah, go ahead and call yourself, you know, the alluring Asian or whatever, you know. And it feels feels kind of hacky. But at some point, and I was always doing porn, I was always trying to hide it. I wasn't talking about it in comedy. I worked with like this career counselor, and she said, "You're not going to get in through the mainstream. You know, you're real different, and you have this double life. You're going to have to like come in through the back door." So now I have to embrace it more, you know? And now I'm kind of eased into where I'm like comedian with a XXX side hustle or something. Like I'm not quite ready to call myself like you know, campy cougar or whatever, but I you know, it's cool that she does that. That totally works for her. But I do realize I have to brand myself a little bit more, make it a little more clear to people who don't know me at all, you know?
Well, it's so funny about you, Sally, is like for instance, every time I book you, people are like, oh my God, Sally's gonna be there because they love your porn stories. You know, it's like they know that they're gonna get wild stories, you know, and I think that like your brand is very, very clear, but you don't have to just flat out title yourself. But like because your voice is so clear, people know what they're gonna get. You know, it's gonna be a wild time.
Well, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, and I even when I met you, like we met at the fourth wall, like I can't remember what year it was. And like the first like story she told, I was like, oh my God, I need to interview her for Hustler. Like because she was just like so open about it. And immediately, like to me, the voice was there and I knew I would get a good interview from you because you're very open. So it's like that could be branding itself. I don't think people necessarily need to give themselves a tagline, but it's just more about, are you so open that people know what they're going to get when you show up?
That might be part of it. I mean, that even before I talked about porn and comedy, like 10 years ago at the Comedy Store, people would say, hey, my friends asked if the drunk, horny lady was going to host the show again. So, you know, it's always been sort of an outgoing party vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's so hard to know your brand because, like, I see myself as so shy and introverted, and nobody will believe that, you know?
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that most comics are introverted, right? Where it's like we prefer a one-on-one experience, and like an audience is basically they all become one thing. So it's like a one-on-one still, even though we're in a room full of people. Like I hate like one time I was asked to do a panel, but the panel was a lot of people, and instead of it being like a conversation, it was like, oh, you have a question and you answer it. It was like encouraged where you talk over each other, and
Mm.
I just kind of like faded out because I was like, this is too loud, so
I'll be
Yeah.
like that too. I'll be like, your turn,
It's hard to
yeah.
get a word in edgewise. And, sometimes that's what can be weird about other forms of comedy versus stand up, where you're given the spotlight, you're given the microphone, and you're given all of that authority.
That's an amazing observation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's maybe why I never gravitated towards sketch too much, because it's like, oh, I have to listen and wait my turn. And then like that person maybe wants to dominate. I mean, I've been on some podcasts where you can't get a word in edgewise between either the other guest or the host. I mean, we've all been on
Mhm.
podcasts where the host is just like, listen to me, sit and listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah. This
Naked.
is
You be
not
naked.
this one. This is the No Rogan podcast.
Oh, does he do that? I mean, I'm happy to say I've never listened to his podcast.
He's been claimed, it's been claimed that he's done that. And I'm not trying to go to battle with the biggest podcaster in the world, but yeah. And Sally, I was going to say that yeah, you might be shy, but that's the format where it gives you that, because you're well composed when you have the microphone and you have the spotlight. You're well composed. You know what you want to say, and it's entertaining to everybody. And I think that even if it's not specifically porn, I like that there's always going to be sleaze. It's
Yeah.
sleaze is fun. Sleaze has a built-in sort of like entertainment value to it, as opposed to me trying to like tell somebody like why the invention of doorknobs is stupid. Like I have to really work to make that funny, because it's like, wait a second, why, who cares, but sleaze, it's like already, okay, we all have that uncle or whatever, that trashy aunt.
Sleaze is my brand. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so see, you have a brand. It's kind of like I brought Sally onto my podcast and we're talking about Army Hammer, and Sally's like, "Man, how come Army Hammer won't reply to me?" And I was like, "Oh, okay," but it's like you're gonna get a very unique perspective always.
Keith has been trying to get Army Hammer to
I,
notice me for a while too.
listen, I know it's not exactly topical, but I threw in an Army Hammer bit for you tomorrow, Sally, because I know it's just my gift to you.
Thank
Because
you.
I know the story's too juicy. Like we can't let it go, right? It's too
Juicy is
juicy.
right.
Yeah.
Juicy and bloody.
Juicy is right. We
All right. So another question, since you brought it up, Teresa, I just wanted to ask about like when when it comes to producing and creating the lineup, do you ever feel like, is it an uncomfortable position trying to sort of orchestrate and show diversity? You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's a little bit like you're picking ice cream flavors, and it feels a little bit too forced.
I think for me, like I don't find the diversity forced because those are the people that I befriended. Because
Mhm.
for instance, like when I first kind of started off, like, I just kind of noticed they're not like they're being snobby, but I just noticed that there were some like white shows that you could just not get in. I was
Mhm.
gonna like, okay, like they're never gonna like they're cliquish. And I kind of felt like in general, like a lot of the people that I befriended, and I don't know if it's because minorities just seek out other minorities, but those just happen to just be my friends. And so I book people based on do I just like them? Like, are they funny, but do I like them? So yeah, I guess I don't view it as hard because it's only, I base it off that. Yeah. If I like them.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you have a pool that's diverse enough to draw from, that you don't have to force any more diversity on it. So like
Oh
if you
yeah,
just,
yeah. I don't believe in forced diversity. I'm not like, oh, I need to have this race or whatever on it. It's just more of like, I think it's because my friends just happen to be
Mhm.
diverse in like
Yeah.
different ages, race wise. I became friends with a lot of women comics. I think it was just that. It wasn't like, yeah, I wasn't trying to fill quotas by any means. I think it was
Mhm.
just more about like, these are just happen to be who my friends are. And those people who were my friends also seem to get shut out of these
Mhm.
more cliquish white shows.
Yeah. Yeah, because I noticed that so we do 3 mics a week, and then we do our showcases, and the mics are anyone can sign up in any slot out of the 3 days. And so sometimes we get this, so that's just a random, that's the people choosing which slot they want. And we get sort of, sometimes it's all guys, sometimes it's all women, sometimes it's a perfect mix of diversity. Sometimes it's very specific, like only white women or only, whatever. And then, so because we have a big list of comedians that we like who we invite to the mics, but maybe it could be more diverse. And then sometimes for our shows, we're like, oh, who should be in this slot? And it just feels a little bit weird when you're trying to say, no, it should be such and such of an ethnicity, et cetera, to show diversity, because I don't want to have that appearance that we're not diverse. I don't want to look like the white show that is hard to get into ever, and it's run by two white guys. So it's like,
Yeah,
I
and
don't
also
know.
even when I'm saying, like when I see a show and it looks very white and whatever, I don't think that they're like white power and trying to be like icing minorities. I don't think it's anything like that. But yeah, I think it's just how people end up clicking up together.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
it's kind of an accident or whatever. But it's just, I think for me, my friends just somehow happen to be minorities.
Yeah. And I think really what being woke is about is showing the world that the old days of exclusion are over, and like everybody's welcome. It's inclusive now. And that's, as long as you're doing that, I think it's good enough. You don't have to really bend over backwards and,
Well, it's
Well, I will say a few years ago, like kind of not alt right, but like alt comedy movement was probably mainly white comedians. Um, and it did feel very cliquish in that those shows were just hard to get into if you sort of didn't roll with the crowd.
Mhm.
That being said, the crowd was like kind of the crowd who maybe frequented those bookstores or coffee shop shows or like spots in that area of town. Like it was also kind of just to do with like the demographic that came to those events, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
So it did sort of get a rep for being like this very, exclusive white hipster, non-diverse. You've got to have a certain look. The girls always look a certain way, the guys always look a certain way. So it did get that rep, but I don't think it came from a place of hate.
Mhm.
yeah, I
It's
don't
just,
think
but
so
it
either.
was what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the same way where it's like it's not, I don't think anyone's intentionally trying to be one
Right.
way by any means.
Yeah.
It's just more of a like that's what they have going on. And if I don't fit into there, instead of me just sitting around being like, oh, why don't they like me? I'm gonna create something separate. And then it's funny is like I've gotten some criticism where people are like, why don't you book more white guys? And I'm
Mhm.
kind of like, I do actually book a lot of white guys. It's just I won't book you. It's like it's just a different
Especially
thing.
not now. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just more about like the vibe because for instance, like with my following, it's like I have a lot of white male followers and like they like that all the people are different and stuff. So it's like it's just it's a vibe. Like and that's it. So I have my own vibe, other people have their own vibe. And but that's why I had to create something because I wasn't vibing over there.
Mhm.
I think too that a joke comic, like maybe a comic who has a lot of, I think that a lot of that scene was also about like content, about material when it came down to it. They liked a certain approach and they were very woke people. I mean, they were cool people, they're educated people, they're liberal, but it was also like, people would say like alt comedy was like no jokes, it was
Yeah.
more like a movie review or something. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's kind of like at my show when I was talking about the vibe is that everyone's funny, but they're nice. They're like people that you would like invite to your house. Like that's
Mhm.
how nice people are.
yeah.
Like, I've been to a show before where it was like combative, where it was a little bit like I would be terrified if this person knew where I lived,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like, there's just different vibes. And I try to keep that out and I don't even want to be a part of that
Same.
vibe.
My favorite comics are the ones where they're just as funny, if not funnier, off the stage in conversation than they are when they're performing. Like there's the party's still going. You're throwing out tags, you're joking, you're having fun. It's a good time. And it baffles me when I see a comic who was great on stage comes off and they're like, yeah, whatever. And and it's dry and no fun and they're boring. And you're like, what are you? What do you do? Why are you here?
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the whole community thing. Like, community really matters to me because, yeah, like I will book someone if they're not hilarious, but like a nice enough person where they were pleasant, where it's like, yeah, I believe this whole thing about I don't know who's going to be ending up being famous or rich or whatever, but I want to be like, oh, I like this person. This was an enjoyable time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, not everybody on your lineup has to be a fucking killer. And this brings up, and I don't want to jump the gun because we're probably going to talk about some of it later, but I mean, you're going to have a couple people who don't do that well on every show, and that's why you have 5 or 6 minute spots. I mean, crowd, roll with it. Like, not everyone is going to be your favorite comedian.
Mhm.
Like, we need these dips. And if there's somebody who's put you in their show, you need to give back to them. You need to take care of them. And when I do a lineup, I keep that in mind. And it's not necessarily about the strongest comics. It's like, who is consistent. Like, I might say this dude is brilliant, but if he's trying something new, it could go either way.
Mhm.
And then as far as this lady, she is always solid. Maybe I don't really even like her material or just her setups or whatever, but maybe I think she's kind of hacky, but I know she will pull the energy back up in case this guy
Mhm.
gets really weird, you know?
Yeah,
Yes.
and also when I book, I kind of think like who will end up being friends later. Because I think you met Ignacio at my show, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and when I was kind of like, oh, when I saw that you guys became friends, I was like, good, because it makes people want to do my shows if
Yeah.
you're like, I'm gonna meet someone I'm gonna like later. So I think about that too. I'm like, who as a group in the green room is gonna have a good time? And so sometimes I get kind of mad producing when like the comic like is like I'm too good and like turns off their camera for like everyone
Mhm.
else during a Zoom show, or like they'll leave after their set, like they don't care enough about the other comics. Like that makes me mad. Like I'm like I want to see that you are saying hi to other people. I want to see that like you were laughing at your friends and that you made friends later. Like
It's only an hour.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's only an hour,
And
and I want to see you make friends.
yeah, I approach every green room like it's a kegger on the beach. Like I'm just like, what are we doing, guys? It's a party. Woo!
And
Because
it's
it's a show. You should be loving this.
yeah, it's like if they don't love it, I'm like, well, you're gonna drag my thing because it's like I
Yeah.
don't do this for the money. For the most part, when I was producing shows that were in person, I was losing money. And so, but I was like, I want to do this for fun so that we all can have friends. Like, because I've been a writer for a really long time, but I've been work from home. And so for the most part, I'm kind of like, I would like to make friends. Like that was a big motivation for me to do stand-up. Like I wanted to do it, but I also like, wanted to create a community. And so when people come by and they don't have that same value, I'm kind of like, well, we're not meshing. It's time to leave.
Mhm.
Everyone loves you. And the last show I was in of yours was so good. It was some of the strongest comics and everybody supported each other. So you've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, that really matters to me. I'm like, you guys better become friends.
Yeah.
You
I
better be friends.
when I'm on a show and I get the lineup and the flyer and all that, I make sure to follow everybody who's on there on social media and like connect and then tag everybody in the thing because it's going to look better for you if I'm doing that and vice versa. And if everyone supports it's got to be a big supportive thing. And for somebody who hates bringers and doesn't bring a lot, because bringers are tough sometimes, like this is the bare minimum of just social media, interaction and engagement.
You wouldn't think it would be so hard, but it's so strange because sometimes comics they won't post your flyer or they'll
Yeah.
just put your flyer on their story and
Mhm.
you have to say like, "Hey, could you shout it out?" I mean, it's so weird.
Yeah.
But sometimes though, my cat's in the view now, but like sometimes though, stories actually seem to get seen more than posts.
True,
So
true.
I do actually
Sometimes, yeah.
think like even if they do a story, but like sometimes I'm shocked where like if the comic doesn't promote at all, like won't even like put in the stories, usually I'm like they're either not going to show up or they're going to leave. They kind of end up being crappy on the actual show if they're not promoting. Like I kind of also view promoting as a how enthusiastic are you going to be about it? And like especially now that we're kind of in the Zoom era, I am shocked when a comic will log out, where I'm like, you could have even turned off your camera, which is still kind of crappy, but like at least you appear to be there.
Yeah.
But when they like completely log out, you're like, you couldn't even have pretended to stay, like it kind of shocks me, the etiquette and like how little they care. Or like sometimes I get kind of mad if they don't promote anyone's show, but they'll still do a good job of my show. I like, it's a little passable. But if they promote other people's shows but not mine, I'm like, well, why? Then I don't ever book them again.
Yeah.
It's like that in like porn and fetish too. Like you can be paying somebody for your shoot and they're all excited because they want to work for free for some photographer the next day, and they're like, don't mark me, don't put a bruise on me because I'm shooting for so and so tomorrow. It's like, we're paying you today. You're here now.
Yeah, it's like they can't do a pick and choose kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah.
So, as far as producing your own shows and your content and handling all of these people, does it ever get overwhelming to you guys? And in a way where, it's stressful or you feel like giving up or etc.
so for instance, I think for the most part, I really enjoy it because I'm kind of type A where I love to organize. And also for me, because when things go well, where everyone's having a good time, I'm like, oh, I threw on a really successful party. And that kind of keeps me going. But then if I start getting to the point where I'm like, nobody gives a crap about this, then I'll just be like, I don't want to do it anymore, or I won't work with those people. So for the most part, I guess when it comes to overwhelming, the only time I truly feel overwhelmed or anxious is if I make the mistake of booking people who seem like they don't give a crap, and then I won't be rude enough to not book them or to unbook them. But like, I guess for the most part, I just try to work with people that won't give me that anxiety.
Yeah. And Sally, Sally, you don't put on shows as often, right?
Yeah,
What's your
but
frequency of shows that you do?
yeah, not now. I don't have that issue now. I'm not producing as many shows as you guys. But I would say before the pandemic, just because I was the host at the Comedy Store of D's Nuts, and that show's going on there twice a week, I got so many people who just wanted my input. Like, can we have lunch? Can we have drinks? Can I pick your brain? Here, I have a question for you by email. I'm texting you, blowing up your phone. Watch my set. What would be some advice? What's the next step? Can you write me a joke? Can you fix this joke? That did become overwhelming. So I had to say, hey, every once in a while, I'm going to be at 4 and 20 restaurant on Laurel Canyon. Does a group want to come and meet me there? And maybe a group of like 10 people would come and I'd be like, hey, here's the festivals I'm doing. Here's one thing I really like. I like to do that, but sort of the individual interest, or the fact that I would be, say, running an open mic and it would be on social media that the open mic starts at 5 o'clock. And then I'd get a text, what time does your mic start? I like this person. I don't have a problem with this person, but now I got to answer some texts. It was just like the constant.
Where do I park? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you don't know. Like, I remember about to do my comedy special, and my phone is blowing up of people who can't find parking. So that got a bit overwhelming, and I like the vibe of like being on lockdown. I like the frequency of interaction now, to be honest, much better, and I don't want to go back to the way it was.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go back to a lot of live mics. Live shows I love, but
yeah,
you can get most of what you need off of Zoom for mics, for open mics.
Agreed.
With you. And I also feel like the liar community that you built is so wonderful. Like, I love it. Also, your mic, the minute you put your slotted up, it's like it fills up in like 15 minutes because it has such a good vibe and reputation. So like, you've built something like really, really great.
It is. It's like sharks on a tampon.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. And that's like, it's because we created a party atmosphere. It's a fun party. All our friends are invited. Don't invite any assholes. It's sort of like this underground thing.
Yeah, you definitely, because that's the thing, is like every mic you have, you know it's going to be a good time, and you're right, there's no haters. It's like, I think it's because it's an open mic that's not truly open. It's like
Yeah.
only the people who have been vetted, and I think that's really important too. It's like these crazy people with their bad attitudes can sink the whole ship. And it's kind of like, even when you're talking to Sally about all these people just overwhelming you with stuff, it's like, I get messages, but I ignore people if I don't know them. Like, to me, I'm like, if you're not serious enough that you haven't come to one of my shows and like introduce yourself in person, why would I give a stranger my time? And then
Thank you.
I also teach workshops, and I'm like, you can pay to talk to me. I will literally, at a workshop, if you have like questions about your writing, which is a lot of times what people write me, I will answer them in this workshop. But if they're not even serious enough to go to the workshop, I'm like, why would I just give it to you for free, kind of thing? So
It's almost like the equivalent of DMs and dick pics. You know, join my fucking OnlyFans if you want me to take a look at your cock and talk about it. I am happy to do that. Yeah.
But it's like the more serious people will give before they expect to receive. But the people who just expect, like, why aren't you answering me? Why aren't you giving me a spot? I'm like, but I don't know you. You know, like, why would I watch your video? I don't know you.
You've made no effort to get to know me. Like, even before the pandemic, you know, come to a show that I'm doing at this bar and I'll introduce you to the booker, and then we can talk, and then we have a friendship, kind of, you know. Like, what exactly? There's so many ways to support a comic. Come to their Zoom show. It would mean a lot to them. Then you have something to start with.
Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
No, go ahead, Teresa.
I was gonna say, it's like about relationship building, because sometimes I will meet someone and like a year later I'll book them, but it's not because I didn't like them when I first met them, but I'm like, I just met you and I've met other people year before you.
Yeah,
you
there's
know?
a
And
pipeline.
yeah, and it's kind of the thing. It's like, if you're serious and not crazy, you'll understand that and know that eventually we'll build a relationship and you'll get your turn, or we'll get closer, you know. But people who just meet you right away and expect something right away, I'm kind of like, they don't understand relationships and they don't want to build a relationship, because this is a long game.
Yeah, they're all seeds. You're planting seeds everywhere you go, and
And don't people understand giving back? Like, what does Teresa Lowe need from me? You know, like, what could she possibly need from me? Maybe I'll try and provide her with something she needs, you know, but what could she need? They don't think like that.
Yeah, and I don't want to deal with those people. They bring too much anxiety and stress, and it's kind of like, that's why for the most part I try to wait until the relationship has been built, where I kind of know what I'm gonna get, because I think I've been burned by these like takers and these basically the haters, and it's kind of like I need to know that they're not going to do that, and then sometimes they do that anyway, and I'm surprised.
Yeah. So that brings up another question. So have you guys ever had experience where like being the producer, being in charge in any way has compromised a relationship? I feel like, Sally, you're like trying to narrow it down to, like, I'll give you one. But...
Well, okay, not so much, because as trash talky as I am, I do kind of tend to stay out of the drama. I mean, sometimes situations are created where it's like, you should have thought that through, because now I have to deal with all of you, you know? So before you guys got in a fight, you should have thought, like, how does this affect things later? But one thing I did notice, and I noticed this when I was first starting out, was something like, everybody thinks the show they're producing is the be all end all. And even if they owe somebody something, they won't consider him good enough to put in the lineup or something like that. Like, I remember one time I worked with a partner on a show, and that partner had booked a comic, and then the comic turned around and produced a show, and the comic said, Sally, I love your humor, I want you on the show. And I said, well, what about so-and-so, my partner, who was the actual person who booked her? Oh, he's hit or miss. I don't really like his stuff. It really doesn't matter. Your show is not direct on TV tonight. You know, you can have a couple of turkeys in your show. First of all, he wasn't even a turkey. And secondly, you owed him. Don't forget about who you owed. When you first start producing, it's very important to say, who gave me stage time? You know, who is giving me stage time? It's not about, oh, who's got a big name? Who might take me on the road with them? Who's helping you now? Or who helped you when you sucked, you know?
Yeah, like sometimes that'll happen to me where I booked people and then I actually asked them, can I do your show? And then they pull that like, oh, and then I see they try to book people like maybe above the level.
Uh-huh.
But then I'm just kind of like, well, I just won't book you again. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then but I also think, I guess, the tough relationships too, where sometimes, for instance, the only thing that I require for my show is I want you to promote. I don't even care how you promote. Just even if putting a story just once in a while is okay enough for me. And
Cool.
then, do the show and like do a good job and then support the other comics. Those are the only things. I don't require people to bring. I don't need, other stuff. But then like some people don't even do those three things that like I outline. And I'm kind of like, well, I told you and you didn't do it, then I'm not going to rebook you, And
Basic.
then sometimes though they ask for spots after, but I'm kind of like, what the three requirements are and you didn't do it. And it kind of creates some kind of like weird tension, but it's kind of like, no, like I just, yeah. So it does create kind of like a weird thing when that happens because, if we didn't ever have that interaction, I never would have thought negatively about that person.
Uh-huh.
They would have not
Yeah.
had a negative experience with me. But at the same time, I view this as like, this is still a professional environment, even if we're not necessarily getting paid. And it's like, this is a lower stakes item that I would rather vet them now instead of a higher stakes. Like, I don't want to like one day work on a TV show and recommend them and find out that they are such jerks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
So
point.
this is a smaller, like we're all building something together and like, keeping the jerks out basically.
Totally. And you know what? Honestly, when it comes to booking me on shows, if somebody has like an objective criticism of my caliber as a comedian, that's fair. Like I don't care about that. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the only things that I'm like, okay, because I'm new and I understand that. It's sometimes there's other politics and drama, et cetera, that come into it, and that kind of feels weird sometimes.
One time I had this woman and I hate sharing the story because like sometimes she like watches me and she'll like comment and pretend we're friends. But like she left my show early and I was kind of like, fine, whatever, you left. I'm just not gonna rebook you. And she also produces her own shows, never booked me, even though I asked her. So I was a little bit like, we don't have a relationship. It's like whatever. But then it was funny. She actually had the nerve to tell me, she was like, I left your show early, but I just want you to know I never leave shows. It's just the day I left your show, it was an emergency. And her emergency was really dumb. Like, I'm not going to share what it is because she sometimes watches what I say. But I'm like, oh, so you care about other people's opinions, just not mine, So it got weird where I was like, oh, if I never had a show, I never would have had this weird interaction.
Yeah.
I feel like
That's
you
funny.
you should consider when you're booking, when you're being booked on a show as a comic, that you're not booking yourself for that 5 or 8 minutes. You're booking yourself for that hour or hour and a half.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why? It's just an hour and a half. I get it if the show lasts 4 hours. You're like, wait, I didn't sign up for this, but like an hour and a half, 2 hours or 1 hour is just like, what is the big deal? And it's like, if you drove across town and did a set, like you already have sacrificed that time. You can't stay one extra, just.
This
It's
is
like watching a
human
movie.
nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's human nature. It's the less you ask people to do, the less they want to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like watching a movie, and if you take the amount of laughs that you get in a 90-minute comedy show and compare that to take any movie, how many jokes are in that movie? There's more entertainment value. I don't understand why stand-up isn't more of a popular performance art. Why it's so hard to bring, why it's so hard to get comics engaged with it. Some comics.
I think there's just a personality deficit that you won't see until you book someone. So for instance, like I did an underwear show at Sal's Comedy Hole and like the I only got to do one and then the pandemic hit, but like the concept was so clear, right? It's like wear your underwear, but for people who are more shy, I was like, at least wear pajamas because it was called Slumber Party. So it was at least you didn't have to be revealing if you're conservative.
Teresa loves slumber party.
But crazy story. So I booked this improv team and like the improv teams knew their role was they're supposed to watch the other comics and then do the improv based on that. The improv team didn't show up on time, and then they were wearing jeans and stuff. I was like, are you serious? And then when they did the thing, I introduced them and I was like, the improv team will be doing the improv based on the stand up. The guy actually, the minute I got off stage, said, actually, we would like a suggestion. And I was like, oh my God, how disrespectful are these people? So they're wearing jeans. Wow. They don't follow the concept. Not only that, it is an underwear show. If you didn't watch the other sets, at least make jokes about underwear. Mm-hmm. No, they did a whole thing about being in a car. I actually cut their time in half and got them off the stage, but I was curious. I was like, who are these people? Like, why would you agree to the set? And then after their set, they left. And I was, who are these people? Like, I don't understand this mindset of like, how can you act like this and treat people like this? And the underwear show had an audience of 70 people. So they did this in front of a giant crowd, this crazy behavior. And I just did not understand that whatsoever. Like, what's going on through your mind that you would act like this?
Yeah, it's like I gave you a crowd.
Yeah, they probably left in a tiny car.
It made no, I still look back at it like, don't you guys feel any shame or like, what were you doing? Like, I just did not understand.
Yeah.
Worst improv group ever.
They were awful. And I was shocked because like they've been doing improv for a while. Like I actually did a show, one of their shows, like they did stand up combined with improv. And so they've been doing it for a while, but I was like, oh, then you choke when someone asks you to leave your little stage, you know, it's weird.
That's funny. So my last question for you guys is if you've ever experienced something where you've noticed that producing or you know, whatever kind of engagement you have to have with this production has a detrimental effect on your performance as an individual performer. It whether there's too much going on in your mind or you can't focus on, or, you know, have you ever experienced that where you're like, I'm just too overwhelmed, I can't? I think it's different now on Zoom than it is live, but
this happened to me on a recent Zoom show where I felt so much anxiety because I booked mostly new people, which I think was my big mistake because the new people were so unreliable, where it was like I always booked like, let's say 12, 6 of them never responded. And I was kind of like, are they ever going to show up or not or whatever? And this is the first time I've ever done this, but I sent out an email being like, hey, is everyone going to show up? And then 9 people responded, 3 didn't. So I just cut the 3 people off the poster and I was like, they're not going to come. And then the day of the show, the Zoom show, they all started logging in, the ones that I thought I had cut. And I was like, what is happening? And so it was like really stressful. And then I did my set and like, I think that the set wasn't as strong because I was like so stressed about like, do I want to deal with these people? Yeah. And after that, I was kind of like, it didn't make me never want to do producing a show again, but it definitely was like, okay, I need to do more people I know, not give so many new people a chance, which is terrible. I think that's a sad attitude to have, but at the same time, like that will relieve my stress.
Too many new people in one show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sally, has that ever sort of boiled over for you? And
oh yeah, it has definitely happened. If anything, it's more of like a conceptual thing, or I'll just get too shit-faced because I'm like, I owe this to myself because I put this together, you know. But there is also an element of like, I had to deal with getting this organized, so I'm gonna get mine here. And I don't care if I'm going up first and this room is distracted and we've got, you know, waiters and waitresses coming in and out with drinks. I'm like, I'm going to get mine because, you know, I'm a big part of getting this shit off the ground. So here we go. And like sometimes I'll have a rough opening set, like opening at the Comedy Store. And then throughout the show, I'll go, I'm going to get mine in between these comics. I'm going to get some diabolical, huge laughs.
Yeah.
So I've used it to motivate myself as well.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of hosting. And I've noticed the stress levels. So like doing it on Zoom is a whole different thing because all the communication is through digital, and you're getting emails, you're getting texts, sometimes Facebook messages or Instagram DMs for whatever reason. Then there's the chat. you're keeping up with the random stuff in the chat. There's text stuff. There's people asking you specifically host questions. Can we change the lineup? Can I leave early? Can I do this? And you still have to deliver your own set. You still have to be a performer, and you still want that to be successful. And but I have a love-hate relationship with the hosting duties, because like you said, Sally, you're going to get your extra in between. Like sometimes the tags, I've done shows where tags I've dropped were better than any of the jokes in my set.
Absolutely.
I'm keeping that. That's going in.
Yeah.
And then there's sometimes where you just feel like, I don't know, like you're trying to manage, you're in a hurricane, like you're Al Roker reporting like from a hurricane, and there's just 2x4s going by.
And there, yeah.
You
Go
can't
ahead.
keep up. No, go ahead, Sally.
But there's been times where the opening set is so strong, and you just have this opening set at the top of the show where it's almost like hard for people to follow you. And you feel like you just went up like 5th or 6th. And then in between the comics, you're like not getting laughs. And you're going, no, this was me. This was the girl who like killed up top. You come on, you like what I say, it's very confusing.
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, it's a tough art form. And I'll tell you what, we could have a whole separate podcast on just hosting, because that's a whole thing. But I digress. We're at that time where we are going to have our 2 guests name their own episode, because why would you want me to do it? You guys can probably come up with better content.
Well, we do have a connection from Teresa writing for Hustler magazine, because that's how we both met, because she got me to be in an article talking about porn and prostitution. And I realized that Teresa's perfect for writing for Hustler, because you tell her things you wouldn't tell other people. So I don't know, maybe like something about hustlers or
Sexy hustler cougars is what me.
Old cougar, young cougar.
Old cougar, yes, exactly.
Old cougar, young
cougar creators.
Yeah, maybe that. We have to add some sort of producing thing, since we did focus on that. So old cougar, young cougar producers. That's not catchy, but
working title.
I like it. 2 girls, 1 something. I don't know. Yeah.
How about Cougars Got That Hustle? I don't know.
Yeah. Hustlin Cougars.
Oh, yeah, Hustling Cougars.
Hustlin Cougars. All right, that's perfect.
I like it. That'll get some views. They'll be like, where's the trash? Well, it's here.
It does. We're the trash.
Is there anything you'd like to plug, Sally? Okay, we'll come back to you.
Why don't you start, Teresa?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
She's like Quagmire, the female Quagmire over here. Teresa, is there anything that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so I do a YouTube live stream every Monday through Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific called Talk with T-Lo. My social media on Instagram, I'm Teresa Lowe Writer, and then on Twitter, I'm Teresa Lowe _tweets. And then, that's the main thing that I'm working on right now.
Awesome. Sally?
All right. So yeah, that's all her stuff is great. I've been part of most of it. And I would say Porn Mom Podcast is another place to find me. It drops every Monday. And if you want to see me plug something, go to my OnlyFans, which is under Ms. Jamie Foster, or you can just go to Jamie Foster MILF. And then my comedy special, you can go to Sleazy Does It, sleazydoesit.com. You'll find it there.
It's good. I've seen it a couple times. Okay, that's been our show, everybody. I'd like to thank our wonderful guests, Sally Mullins and Teresa Lowe. I have been your host, Keith Graber. Check back next month for another episode of Everybody's a Comedian. See you guys.